Hello everyone, Fluffy here. Well, as promised, I'm starting a new series called Fibro Fridays, where we will be talking strictly or mostly about fibromyalgia, the symptoms, and I think at the end of each video, I'll discuss how it affects me in my life, and then I would encourage all of you in the comment section to also post how it affects you in your life and what you do to help yourself with that particular symptom. So what I've planned is today, because I thought I had made a video of just how I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but I didn't see that in any of my titles, and I just did one about how I injured my eye. So those of us with fibro know that we have fog, and so some of the dates kind of get away from me. I made a few notes, but they're not really overly helpful about what time. I think those of us, today's episode 1 is just about my journey and how I got diagnosed. I know I fell October, right before, the day before Halloween, October of 2014, and I had already been diagnosed. I believe that me and the ex started trying to find answers for my weird symptoms that I started to get really intensely. But I think if we all think back, those of us that have fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, if we think about it, we've always really had some of the symptoms. Like for me, fatiguing easily, not like now, but more than I should have, comparing myself to other people, my friends, family, and things like that. And then as the years went by, it started to progress, and then I started to get some of the weirder symptoms. And so I started going to my primary, and for him it was, let's try to figure out what was going on, until finally he sent me to a rheumatologist who ultimately diagnosed me. But in between that time, you know, we as fibro warriors, we start thinking, because these are weird symptoms, is it all in my head? Am I really having these symptoms? And but the one thing I can give my ex credit for is she said that we will not stop until we have answers, because a lot of times I would, my primary would test for something and I wouldn't have it. There was no explanation. And so there was, the chest pressure and pain, and I would go to the emergency room, and then my weight, my age, they would immediately hook me up to an EKG machine thinking I was having a heart attack, and of course I wasn't having a heart attack. I know now that it was costochondritis, but so it was just constantly that, back and forth, and I was very fortunate that I had a job that I had sick hours, and you developed a lot of time on the books where you could take days off or call in sick and still be okay with your job. And I know that is difficult for some fibro people as well. And so I made myself feel guilty of having to call out. I called myself having a really good week if I could make it 6 days, because then you work 6 days and then you were off too. So it was just that, being more fatigued, having to call in, being more sore. And so finally he said, well, I just really don't know what's wrong with you. Let's go to a rheumatologist. And the ex came with me, and we sat there and had a conversation with him about just some of the weird symptoms and how I was getting along and with my health and every day. And while I'm talking, he pulls out this little piece of paper, and it has writing on it that I can see, and he starts asking me these very specific questions, and they were questions about, all the weird symptoms that you get with fibro. I don't remember all of them, but it was, have you ever been sitting there and all of a sudden you get nausea that comes out of nowhere? And, I look at him, and I look at the ex, and I'm like, oh my God, yes. Do you also have change in your bowels that come, from one end of the spectrum to the other? that seems to come out of nowhere. And it was, oh my God, yes, And so it was just systematically those things. And he told me that you have fibromyalgia. He said, now there are 3 other things that it could be, so we will definitely test you for those. But I'm sure they're going to come out negative, and they did. And I know one of the ones I believe was lupus. I think that he tried to, that he tested me for. And there were 2 other, like, major, like, when I heard them, I knew what they were. I just, for the life of me, cannot remember now. But of course, because I'm filming, right? So, I'm thinking that took about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, from start to finish. And then it was, okay, now I have a name for it. And I don't know about y'all, but I didn't want to be something that couldn't be cured. You know what I mean? But part of my brain was relieved to give what was going on with me a name. Oh my God, it has a name. I'm not going insane. It's not all in my head. It's not because I'm getting older. It's not because, you know what I mean? It's not because I need to lose weight. It has a name. So, since I knew its name, I started researching and started to try to do the things that would possibly help my symptoms, my pain management, the management of my fibro, because the medical community really doesn't have a treatment and definitely not a cure at this point. They still don't know exactly what causes it. So if you don't know what causes it, how can you have a cure? There are speculations, but nobody knows definitively what that is. So, and then it was after that in October, I fell and ruined this eye, and then it was the next year that I ended up having to quit the state. Actually, I quit the state. Yeah, I quit the state the next year. So, 2015, I believe, I quit. So, it was hard. It does affect your way of life and things like that. And so, just like the rest of y'all, it's one hell of a journey. So, that is my fibro story. Feel free to ask me any questions. I will answer them the best that I can. If it gets too private, but there's really not too much about me. About myself in particular, that, this is K-Cup hot chocolate. That's private with y'all. I share pretty much at least my medical stuff with. So, from here on out, each episode will be about 1 or 2 symptoms, and we'll kind of break it down in layman's terms. I'll try to not make it boring. I know y'all say I can't be boring, but when you talk about medical specifics, it can get boring. That's why I don't watch a lot of videos about fibro from the medical field. Because they just, they get real. So I'll try. So if there's symptoms that you find that you want to discuss immediately, I'll try to put those particular symptoms to the forefront and talk about it. I will have researched some websites to try to get the information. And if I remember, I'll tell you where I got that page. And if you have information that I put out there that is not like mine, that does not agree with mine, that is fine, okay? I'm not one of those type of people that doesn't want to hear somebody else's opinion. All I ask is that you be kind and respectful, because I would do the same for your channel if you have one or if you had one. So, just be respectful about it. I don't mind discussing it. Because, just to be clear, I think I said it in the beginning, I am not a doctor, I am not a nurse, I am not an expert in fibromyalgia. These are things that I've researched, and these are going to be things that I do for myself that help me in my day-to-day activities and pushing through the pain and persevering. So, yeah, That's it. Some of them will be long videos and some of them will be short videos. Like today, episode 1 is just kind of a brief overview of my journey with fibro, and it's a very quick one because day to day was difficult. You know, the guilt and shame of having to call out all the time because I always considered myself a reliable person at work. And while nobody said anything to my face, you know, talk gets back to you. And so some understood and some didn't, but I think I was my hardest critic. And having to quit really hurt. And especially I still have officers that are on my Facebook, and I listen to them complaining about work, and, you know, I think, oh, I want to complain about work. Or they take selfies on the way to work and they're in uniform, and it's like, oh, I miss the uniform. I mean, I don't. It's men's clothes, but I miss wearing it, and all that encompasses wearing that uniform. So, any topic that you, like I said, any symptom or topic that you would like to discuss on Fibro Fridays, I will take that into consideration, go by the biggest majority, like if somebody wanted to, like 4 or 5 people wanted to discuss one symptom and only 2 people wanted to discuss the next symptom, then I would go with the majority. If nobody has any suggestions, then I'll make a list because I only have 2 things that I want to discuss next time, and it just depends on how much I go through the first symptom is going to determine. Because I think if I leave them short ones, it'll be more interesting. You know what I mean? Oh my God, 40 minutes of one symptom. So anyway, this concludes episode 1. I'm hoping it's enough to intrigue you to want to see episode number 2. And we'll try to keep this going until we're out of ideas. So, but with fibromyalgia, there are a ton of symptoms. So, having said that, God bless y'all. Positive vibes out to each and every one of you. Remember to always be kind and be your own advocate. Persevere. Perseverance is the channel word for 2020. Keep going. Keep moving forward. Y'all have a great weekend, and I will talk to y'all real soon, okay? Bye.